Hello, everybody. We're a couple minutes late starting, but that's the norm with the summertime. We're still waiting for 5 or 6 other people that said they'd registered, that were interested in coming, but have not attended or have arrived yet. But let's get started, and because all of our time is very important to us, and I appreciate everybody for being here. On behalf of the Ontario 5 Bowlers Association and the membership of the Ontario 5, I look forward to a very good event. The first one we had in Oshawa went really well. What I want to make sure is we all are on the same wavelength of is that this is a fact-finding mission on what we can do to make our sport and the Open Championship, Senior and Open Championship, better for everybody. The elected board of directors are here working on behalf of you, the membership. So it is up to you guys to tell us where you want us to go, what you want us to do, and make sure we get that stuff done. Before I go into all the introductions, I just want to clarify, actually let's do the introductions first, follow the procedure, the way we got it here. With us today is the new Vice President of the Ontario 5 Bowlers Association, Susan Burns. Directors sitting down at the front here, which you probably know most of us, is Kevin Burns and Brenda Hamilton.
Kevin Burns.
I do that all the time, Kevin, I apologize. Kevin Jepson. No, you don't even look like that. You're a lot easier to get along with. And myself, the president of the Ontario 5, John Cresswell. When we did our first roadshow, I had asked everybody that when you wanted to speak, you needed to come and grab the microphone. We're going to ask you to do that once again, just to keep the flow as smooth as possible without getting a bunch of off topics going on and stuff. The one extra thing I'm going to ask you to do to help Sue out is, hey Don, hey. Nice to meet you. Don made it.
Sorry I'm late.
That's okay, no problem. If anybody is going to come up and speak or wants to speak, put your hand up to let us know that you want to speak. And then come up here, say your name and what zone you're from, if you don't mind, so Sue can record it properly. The first time through, I had to re-watch the whole video from start to finish of the whole event to fill in the spots for Sue that of some of the names that were missing. So it's, I just ask you to do that with us. For those who don't know yet, the Open Championships for 2019 with Sherwood closing will be going to Maryville in Ottawa. It's a 1-year stint there because working with Neb's Fun World to bring the championships to Neb's for the future was not capable of getting it all in place for next year. And if you listen to the video, or the first video from the roadshow the first time, Tom goes into the reasoning from his side of view why it couldn't happen for them for their business. For us to make it work in 2020, there is going to have to be some changes done to the structure of the event slightly. And we can't, but we will work on that together as we go through this stuff. And with that, Kevin, it's all your floor.
As you can see in the paperwork that I provided you with, there was a number of motions pertaining to the Open and Senior Open that were put on the floor at our annual general meeting in Aurelia. We tabled those motions to these meetings so that we could gather more information before the delegates make a decision on these motions at the semi-annual meeting. They probably, well, not probably, they would have been done at the annual general meeting. However, we wanted to give everyone the opportunity to voice their opinions on it before an informed decision is made in November. Now this is your chance. We'll go through each motion one by one. We're going to gather. Sue is doing a capable set of minutes. If you read the first meeting, she pretty much got word for word, and we're looking forward to that here today too. So thanks, Sue, for that.
No pressure.
No pressure. So your comments will go back to the delegates that go to represent you, your zone, at the semi-annual meeting in November. And then the decisions will be made for the next following season. So let's move on. The first one. I think it's evident that we've gone ahead to do the regional meeting roadshow in 4 locations. So really, what is your feeling on the roadshow? Was it a good idea? Was it a bad idea?
Good idea.
Good idea. Good. Great.
Wonderful.
You're sleeping?
So let's move down the page a little bit. The following rule from the C5's coaches' instructions for the national championships be added to the Green Book rules for this coming season. Score sheets filled out improperly or not signed will result in an initial warning. A second offense will result in a final warning being given. So really you're getting 3 shots at messing up the paperwork. And yet it still happens over and over. So this is just going to reinforce a rule that's pretty much been in place since the beginning of coaches. Any comments on that recommendation? John?
Just for clarification for the coaches, it's both coaches that are signing a sheet. So they will
Yes.
both get the same warning.
Even though it might have been one coach that made the mistake, both coaches are held responsible because they signed the sheet also, acknowledging the error.
So Kevin, is it both teams then that would get a point taken off on the 3rd offense, or is it just the offending team?
Chances are that the next...
Kevin?
They're gonna come to the mic.
Yes, please. Yeah, because she can't pick up
Like you're shy.
Right?
Whatever.
Yeah.
I really don't need a microphone. Brian Lawrence, Middlesex, Elgin. But anyway, I was just asking if the point comes off both teams that are acknowledging the error, or does it just come off the offending team that made the error?
Typically what happens, Brian, is that it doesn't get to the 3rd or 2nd warning with the same team except for the one that's at fault. Okay, so you understand the logical progression? Yes, in the initial warning will go to those 2 coaches. One of those 2 coaches probably won't get a second warning. So, rarely does it get to the point where there's a penalty point given or taken. Central Ontario sent in the following recommendation to change the structure of the banquet to a less formal. The cost could be reduced with cooking stations or appetizers around the room. The banquet could start a little later, which would also give the teams time to have dinner together and arrive at a parade of champions and celebration instead of the formal banquet. In Hamilton at the Sheraton with a reception format, the grand ballroom could support up to 600 attendees. That would be without sit-down tables. That would be more of standing finger foods, etc. Any comments on that recommendation?
Make your own taco bars are always a great idea.
Messy, but yes, good idea. Bob?
Yeah. I think.
You don't need it, but...
Bob Pellos, Mid-Elgin. I think probably we should wait to decide what we're going to do at the banquet until we get to Nets and see what kind of banquet facility they have and transportation to and from the hotel.
Or Ottawa.
Because if they don't have shuttle buses going back and forth, you could end up with a lot of people not going to the banquet. Well, reading the minutes from the last meeting, Nebs is looking at building a banquet facility right there at the bowling alley. So until we get into a permanent home, I think we should probably go off on making a decision about the banquet and see what kind of facility we have.
Good comment. I think one of the things that, being at last Monday's meeting, Tom eyes lit up when he said, transportation. So, knowing Tom England, you can never guess what he's going to come up with. Following as soon as he goes, oh, a light went on. Similarly, how we're ending up with a banquet hall at Neps. Yeah, he has been. We will share these ideas further on how the open goes further forward ahead in our comments after we get through the rest of these recommendations and motions. But there's, dream a little, think about it while we get to that point where we're going to start talking about it.
Kevin, a show of hands for against the idea or for the idea.
Okay, for the central recommendation on changing the banquet to a less formal type of banquet or get together afterwards to celebrate the champions, do we have a show of hands for the motion or for the recommendation or against? For it in the first place, who are in favor of that?
What are we for and against?
Say again.
Whether or not you're having a formal banquet.
Whether or not we're having a formal banquet or just an informal get-together to celebrate the champions.
Next year or 10 years.
So this is for that idea
For the idea of getting rid of the bank.
of getting rid of the banquet. It's not really getting rid of the banquet, but the sit-down.
Sit-down meal.
Toning it down.
Can I make a comment?
Kelly?
Can I make a comment? I just want to ask. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Me too. Yeah, just, well, we got to, sorry, we're going out of order here.
Okay, we'll call the question again.
My concern
Name?
being, Kelly Shelson, Western. With having a sit-down banquet and members need to get to the banquet hall at a certain time, I see the notation saying we'll give teams the ability to go out for dinner first and then come. I think your timing may be a little off in getting people there at a certain time so you can do a parade of champions and who's won. If everybody's off having dinner someplace, can you guarantee, okay, at 8 o'clock we're doing the parade of champions? People could still be waiting for dinner at different places, and then, so you're better off having an organized time. We're sitting down and here's an all-encompassed meal here before, because once everybody wanders off on their own, it's hard to get them back to the parade of champions afterwards.
You already have that problem.
Yeah.
Microphone only.
Okay, me. No, I know.
Anne Marie Last from Western. I think a lot of the problem, not a problem, but the issue with the banquet for the younger kids is the price of it. That, I mean, it was expensive, I think. And I know, it's hard in a big place like the Sheraton to get a cheaper meal. But I think if you made it for a 9 o'clock start for your parade of champions, that's not long enough, you don't think? Or, I don't know, but get rid of the food altogether, but still we have to go in our uniforms. I understand that, because I think the teams that win should be recognized, but the cost factor of that meal deters a lot of people from going to it.
Thank you, Anne Marie. Remember too that the banquet in Hamilton, even though it was across the street from the Sheraton, wasn't the Sheraton.
Oh, right.
That was the Hamilton Convention Center. And they sold their exclusive catering rights to Carmen's, one of the caterers of Hamilton. That's when we started to see our price increase. So it went hand in hand. We were supposed to be getting better value for our money, and I don't think I stand out of line by saying that Carmen's kept reminding us that they were giving us a hell of a deal for what they get. John, do you want to come into that?
Can you cook, John?
I can cook, but my wife would kill me, because then she knows I can cook. No, Carmen's, as Kevin said, when Carmen's took over the convention center, the prices did go up drastically, and it's nothing we have control over. We negotiated with them to keep the liquor and bar prices down. So their regular rate of a convention event was $1.50 a drink higher than what it was for us. Due to the size of the crowd and stuff that we had, we were able to get them to keep the bar prices down. The other thing that they also did for us, the menu that they had was a very specific set of 5 courses available to us at total. So when I went to them about it, I talked to them about the idea of combining 2 of them into like 2 meats, so chicken and a beef, as opposed to having a pasta with it instead, and they gave it to us at the same price. So as much as we all hate the price at the convention center, the price that we charged everybody for the convention center meal is only $1 more than what would cost us to run it. Or that, remember that when I say us, I mean Ontario 5 to run it and the members. So there's no money being made off of doing that. That's the actual cost to our association to host that stuff.
I got a question.
Just before you say that, Don, I was in PBI in April for the interprovincials, and at our banquet, we had somebody request if they could come, a visitor, come to the banquet. So I asked C5, yes, we can come. What's the price? $80. And you know what we had? It was a retro theme or 50s theme, cheeseburger and French fries. And it was $80 for the banquet for a guest. I don't know what they paid for all of us, but that's what they were charging for a guest. So the pricing of banquets and food anywhere you go now is just, yeah, it's going over the moon.
Geez, at PEI, I would have expected lobster. Cheeseburger and fries. Oh, well, okay, Don.
Don Cunningham, Middlesex Elgin. I don't think that is relevant anyway. You're changing everything, right? So anything about Sheridan is history, right? So going forward, we should be more focused on where we're doing that event.
Well, and we won't know till we get there.
Still a cost
But you're
factor.
still going.
I mean, in 2 years, we're gonna be at NEPS. So we're not gonna know what's the cost of the catering for the meal, and what's the cost of the banquet hall. We're not
That's
gonna
my
know any
point.
of that
You
till
don't
we
know.
get until
It's
probably
up in
next
the air.
year.
You just don't know. Like everything's up in the air. You're changing a venue and everything.
Sorry, Bob, I need you to come up and reiterate that on the microphone so that the home viewing audience will get it.
Bob Pello, Middlesex Elgin. In 2 years, we're gonna be at NEPS, so we don't know until probably a year from now, pricing will start coming together, what it's gonna cost for the food, what it's gonna cost for the banquet hall, transportation, all that. We have no idea right now. So I think to change the banquet or to do anything with the banquet is silly at this point in time.
Thank you. Truman, I guess what we're going to ask is, for the support or the non-support of the central recommendation, would you rather see the format of the banquet be changed to a less formal finger food kind of idea and recognize the champions that way? Or do you want to keep the same sit-down, march-in kind of banquet, formal banquet that we've been used to? So.
That's 2 different things you're saying. You're saying one and then the other.
Which do you want?
No, the recommendation is to change the format to a less formal setting. So, who would be in favor of doing that? Oh, sorry, Sue. One more comment before we call that.
Okay, Sue Blanco, Tri-County. Being in Ottawa this year, you've got to be already looking at spots to hold a banquet, I'm assuming, and rooms. Do you think more people are going to go to the banquet because they're there? They're not traveling back and forth, because 90% of you are going to be traveling this year to this event. Is that going to make a difference? And sit down or come as you want? Just a consideration. But $80, forget it.
For a cheeseburger.
For anything.
No, good valid point.
45 now.
So again, just a show of hands, whether you support Central's motion to change it to a less formal setting. Those for that recommendation?
11-4. Those opposed?
Those opposed to that recommendation?
So we're those who are wanting opposed to a less formal. You're
Opposed to a less formal, I still want.
7.
Yes. So if you're opposed to that recommendation, you still want to have the formal march-in kind of sit-down banquet. Very good. You got those two?
Sort of.
The next Central Ontario motion this time has to do with the Senior Open and the Senior Declaration for Singles. Prior to the start of provincials, the senior bowlers should declare whether or not they would like to be considered for singles. This will ensure that the bowlers who are eligible for the stepladder will be competing in that stepladder. This declaration can be part of the bowlers' forms, including optional pools. So what they're saying is, if you had no intention of bowling in the stepladder, why are you bowling in the singles? Any comments on that motion?
Just to clarify, I know some of our bowlers and whatnot that don't really know why this motion's out there. At the AGM, it was brought up because there was somebody who qualified for the senior stepladder this year that did not want to bowl and backed out once they had made the stepladder. That's why this motion's on the floor. So that person should have declared that before even getting to the open. And then the person that was in 6th or 4-7 might have known, hey, I still got a shot because I'm chasing the 6th place person instead of the 5th place person.
Thank you, Bob. Any other comments?
We want to go national. Yes, I agree with what Bob said there. If you don't signify that you want to bowl singles, then don't bowl the singles. But I would ask a question: was the person who withdrew suspended?
Why would they be?
Because you get suspended every time you withdraw from a tournament, right?
You get, yeah, exactly. You get suspended and withdraw from the tournament. Like this year, in this case, I had my knee replacement. I couldn't go to the Open, but I qualified. So according to the rule book, I was suspended, which was lifted after I gave my excuse why I was suspended. But was the person who bowled the single, like, why wouldn't they have bowled the singles? If they didn't want to, why'd they withdraw? So yeah, you need to clarify and signify that you're going to bowl the singles.
Okay. Any other comments regarding the central motion? As a matter of interest, then, who would support that motion?
That you need to declare?
That you need to declare that you are going to play singles all the way through. Any opposed? Let's do it the easy way.
Unanimous.
It's unanimous. Thank you. And again, another central motion. Also having to do with the Open, Senior Open replacement of bowler policy. The Provincial Championships Rule Number 2 changed the wording of this section to include, if a bowler withdraws in the event of a bowler who qualifies for the single stepladder match play finals and is unable to bowl due to illness or injury, or withdraws, he or she will not be replaced. So in other words, if the third place bowler is injured, can't play the match, the person he was supposed to play gets the credit for the win and moves on to against the next stepladder match. Any comments? Those that would support that motion? Again, those opposed? Did you have a comment?
Actually, I did.
Here, Barb.
Hey, Barbara, Mid-Elgin. I think a lot of it might depend on the reason for withdrawal. You know, they withdraw because, okay, I don't want to bowl it. Okay, sorry about your luck. If they're pulling out because they've injured themselves, they've fallen ill through no fault of their own, then to allow somebody else to come up and
But why should
would
they be replaced?
Yeah.
Sorry. Valid point. Again, these comments will be given to the delegates attending the semi-annual meeting so they can make a more informed decision when it comes time to vote on these motions.
I gotta put my sense in.
Come on, Terry.
Terry Little, Western Ontario. I don't agree on the replacement rule, because what happens if you have a match, 4th place, 5th, you have a winner. Now all of a sudden 3rd place, for some reason, you just found out they get hurt, they can't bowl. Are you gonna let the 6th place come in and now bowl now?
Yeah,
You can't do that.
Yeah,
So in any position of the step ladder, if you can't bowl, you should not be replaced. Whoever plays that match automatically gets the win.
Larry, what about just before it even starts?
Doesn't matter when it
If
happens.
3rd place was injured, then everybody moves up a spot and
No.
6 comes in.
Top 5 people qualify,
Oh,
those
that's
5
what
people make it. If you get hurt or can't play the next day, whatever, sorry, you forfeit your match.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So, asking then your opinion on that motion. All those who would be in favor of such a motion, show your hands.
Not be replaced, yeah.
I think it looks like it's, I should ask the opposed first.
2 opposed.
2 opposed. Thank you. Okay. Now this is a fun one.
Yeah, you got a lot of seniors here.
I included. Central Ontario put forward the motion at the AGM and now deferred to the semi-annual. Seniors as part of the aggregate. Since all zones now enter a senior mixed team, their team standing should be included in the aggregate calculation. The point system utilized for the other teams could be used to calculate a true aggregate contingent winner. Any discussion?
Go ahead, Brian, I'll let you talk first. And then I'll kind of shoot down everything you say.
I agree. I also bowl the Master Bowlers Association, and the seniors do count as part of the aggregate, even when you go to nationals. So I agree that the seniors should be part of the aggregate, and I'll even go one step further. And I know some people don't want to hear this, but I think you should have a mixed team at nationals for seniors as well.
Give the reason why.
There's enough people, I don't know about the other provinces, but I know there's enough people in this province that would definitely love to go to nationals with the Open.
Did you give an answer to that?
No, I'm going to sit on the picket fence on this issue. When we brought the seniors division or seniors open into competing with the open players, it never was part of the aggregate calculations. However, if you've noticed over the past number of years, when the aggregate announcement is made, the seniors come up and get an aggregate banner. Now, the cost of those banners is minimal, but it's, to me, as a bowler in the event, I think as part of the contingent, you like to be recognized too. Fair enough?
Fair enough.
Okay. We can get into all kinds of off-topic discussions on this motion, so I'm going to call the question as to whether you support this motion or not, because we will be including those comments that might come out of this discussion in our aftermath. Fair enough?
Can I speak first?
Bob? Sure.
I think there's two ways we can go with the seniors. We can either move them to a different house and run this as a separate tournament. We keep saying seniors open is a separate tournament, separate from the open. Run it as a separate tournament. Or we make the seniors division a part of the open, just like mixed division, ladies division, whatever. They become another part of the open and it's one tournament. And then yes, they are included in the exit.
Correct.
And I'm okay with them either way, it doesn't matter.
We will explore that further later on in the meeting. Okay? Those in favor of the central motion to include the seniors as a part of the aggregate calculations. Those for?
Bring them in.
Those opposed? That's unanimous.
You don't have to
Believe it or not, we do get to a point of this paper that there's a motion other than Central putting forward. The next Central motion has to deal with banquet tickets. The banquet tickets for the competitors should be included in the assessment. All competitors should be expected to be at the celebration of the winners. The assessment could be at the bowler level or at the zone level. Guest tickets could be purchased on top of the assessment. So instead of paying the $30 assessment, you would add the banquet cost into that, and you would be charged a bowler assessment of, say, $65 or $70 or $80, depending on the cheeseburger you got. Any discussion on that? Steven?
This is his opposed question.
Stephen Thompson, Mid-Elgin. I semi-disagree with that because a lot of people work shift work and whatnot, and going into the event, they know that they won't be able to make the banquet, regardless of whether they won or not, blah, 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 blah. So if they've got to go to work Saturday night or Sunday night, whenever it happens to be, right, they just know coming out of the gate, they can bowl the whole competition, but they're not going to be able to go to the awards.
Thank you. Barb?
Barbara, Mid-Elgin. I guess going back to the initial discussion regarding the banquet, at this point, nobody knows what that's going to look like once everything settles in Oshawa. So even having this discussion regarding this needs to wait until the decision is made on what's going to actually happen with the banquet moving forward.
No doubt. We do have to remember, though, that these motions were sent in April before we had any recognition of the fact that Sherwood would no longer be there. So
Wasn't that a given? Sorry, wasn't that a given?
there was speculation. It was definitely one of the trying years to be at Sherwood this past season. I can remember a couple of years prior to when the mysterious illness went through. That was a trying year. But that was an interesting. I think one in every three were suffering from that mysterious illness. However, Central put this motion forward based on the fact that it was still going to be in Hamilton, so we have to give this some consideration. And regardless, I'm one of those old-time bowlers that feel that everybody should be at the banquet and applauding those people that are up at the head table. They deserve that accolade. And for many that have been up there many times, it might become old hat. But if you get your one and only chance to sit up there, and that's your only chance, you want to have that same affordability that you were given the other bowlers when they were up there. Correct?
Correct.
So, who would be in favor of that motion that Central put forward on everybody being assessed a banquet ticket?
Can I just say something?
Sure.
I don't agree with adding it to the assessment fee because a lot of people don't understand why there's even an assessment fee to start with. They don't know what that assessment fee covers. So, and I know we don't know what we're doing in the future, but I think if you add another $45 or $20 or whatever it is, that assessment fee is just going to keep growing. And I agree they need the recognition, but you can also do that by not having a formal dinner.
Yep. This is the place to share these ideas. Who would be in favor of the assessment covering banquet tickets for each bowler at the Open or coach? Opposed? These are unanimously opposed. John?
Just a quick clarification on what the assessment covers or how it comes into place. I know it's come up numerous different times. The Ontario O5PBA Bowlers Association takes every one of our events and makes them an individual break-even championship. You take all the expenses, and then you figure out how many entries you got, and that's what the cost to enter is. What was passed when it first came into effect was that we were traveling to BC. We're going again this year to BC. The cost to travel to BC is way higher and exorbitant to go to the extreme coasts of our country than it is to go somewhere in between. So the extra cost that year was put in place to cover the extra cost to participate. After that year was over with, the budgeting of the association looked at it saying that if we keep everybody paying $30 assessment, the entry fee for everybody to participate goes down because we've got that extra money coming in. So the assessment was added in as a cost to offset the costs of the association event, be it whatever it is, the lineage or the national championships or whatever. But on the senior side, national championships aren't there, so it's not put towards that. It's put towards the cost of the event. That's why the cost for the seniors championship is way lower than it is for the open championships. So everybody's paying the same assessment to go to the provincials, and then but the cost to participate in the championship is a lot less to start with on the senior side than it is on the open side. But the open bowlers, if they win, if they're lucky enough to win, they also get to go to the national championships, be it Ontario or wherever that is that year. So that's why there's still an assessment in there. We could take out the assessment, but then the entry fee for everybody goes up because is $20 or $22 more because now there's a cost there. The assessment was added to try and offset the cost of getting more people to participate in the open championships to start with.
John, are we talking bowler assessment or zone assessment?
Yeah, that's the bowler assessment. The zone assessment pays directly towards the putting on of the championships. As John just explained, the bowler assessment allows the budgeting for those expensive years going forward. This year we're going to BC for nationals. Our costs are obviously going to be higher for accommodations and travel to get there. But thinking back, the board decided that if we imposed a $30 assessment on each bowler and keep that continually going, then that slush fund is there for those years when we go to Newfoundland or to BC where the cost is going to be more expensive.
But for the banquet,
This is asking to put the banquet cost into the bowler assessment.
Sorry, just one quick clarification on that. The bowlers, or the membership 5 years ago said that they didn't want the bowlers who were participating this year covering costs for somebody bowling in 4 years. So that was taken out of that assessment, Kevin, at the time? It was moved in to be a fixed cost. So let's take give you a quick scenario how this comes up. The Open Championships in Sherwood this past year, we had, 1,500 lines of games bowled, no more than that. Almost 5,000 lines of games bowled, approximately. Take that total cost of $20,000 as a rough number at $4 a game. So that was what our association cost was. Out of that, the bowlers who participated at the provincial championships put $30 towards that cost. The leftover cost that was left over that was now gone back to the zone assessment. If that makes sense of how that mathematics, so it's tied to both events. So if you add the banquet into that part, the total cost of the banquet would have been added to the bowler assessment, not to the zone assessment. Okay, so when we're traveling to Newfoundland, or not Newfoundland, when we traveled to Newfoundland, it was just as expensive as traveling to BC, extreme coast. But the cost, the first year when we first implemented the assessment was to cover the extra cost to go there. The second year onward, we didn't do that anymore because the membership didn't think it was fair that we were adding extra cost this year. You're paying for it, you're paying for it, you're paying for it, and you're going each time. But then the third year, you're not going. So why should you have paid prior years to do that? So the year, whatever year somebody's participating, they're paying the extra cost to get there that year. Sorry. That's okay. It's a weird number to figure out.
Yeah, and there's so many variables that go into each year. All right, so did I get the answer? I forget now.
Yes.
Okay.
Again.
Let's move on to the next Central Ontario recommendation this time. Recommendation, not a motion. That due to the size of the tournament, there should be one judge of play and one runner for every 6 lanes of bowling. Yes, that means we have to recruit more volunteers. And obviously with that, there is some underlying cost to bring more judges of play online. It's minimal, but still, yet there's more cost. Again, one of the things that was addressed because of being Sherwood was we could have as many judges of play up front, but if there's only one runner at the back, they can only fix the machines as fast as that one runner can take them from one end of 24 lanes to the other. In many cases, that was the delays that were being experienced, not so much at the front end. We're still going to have unique circumstances, whether we be in Maryville or in Nebbs. Each bowling center will provide its own set of circumstances as to and how we grow with those circumstances to be able to make the tournament run streamlined. I'm sure Stephen can share with this bowling center what their circumstances are.
Just speaking from a semi-proprietary standpoint, Terry could probably agree with this. If you're going to ask for there to be more staff, essentially is what you're asking for, are you okay with increasing the assessment fees so that proprietors can man the staff that you want them to have, right? Because that's what it'll come down to. If they only have X amount of people on staff, but they don't have that many runners, and you say for this event we want this many runners, then you're going to have to cover that somewhere. Because as a proprietor, good luck asking them to eat that, right?
That increase minimum wage, it's all I remember.
And again, we've been very fortunate. The staff at Sherwood did what they could do for us. Many of those pin chasers or runners are still in school and had to take time off of school to be there to work for us. So to bring in more would be difficult. However, we have to, I guess, now that we're going to be changing our circumstance, we'll have to see how it runs in Ottawa. We'll have to see how it runs. We know how it's going to run in Nebbs because we've already got some familiarity with Nebs. A lot of the scoring changes and pin setting is all done by the little laptop there at the front end. So, I guess we just have to, hopefully, these things work themselves out. John's going to give you a little bit more insight.
Make me the bad guy again. No, from a proprietor point of view and from a bowler point of view, we all want to work together as much as we can to make sure everything runs smoothly for everybody. The cost associated, if we're asking for something extra, and I'm saying we as bowlers are asking for something extra from the proprietors, and I would expect during my negotiations of the contracts that type of discussion would come up and they would say, okay, we need an extra nickel a game or whatever it is to cover those costs. The proprietors set their rate on a yearly basis of what it is for lineage. This upcoming year, my understanding is it's going to be $4.50 a game. So our budgeting has changed slightly on some of our events because of that. It's gone up from the $4 rate we had before. We got a great deal at Sherwood. We were slightly under that, but as you know, the situation with Sherwood was a little different. From our point of view, from the volunteer side for the judges of play, I'm going to throw something out as an idea to everybody. What do you think of the idea of each zone providing at least one judge of play to be available during the championships? That way then, instead of saying to have, like right now we've had it really good in the Hamilton Association area, Hamilton and Niagara and Grand River, all the local areas around them all provided us with judges of play that came in for the day and helped out. And it was great. So we got through the stuff along with the board of directors who weren't working or who were not bowling the championships, were helping out as judges of play. Going to Ottawa this year, Ottawa doesn't have the same volunteer base that we had available in the Hamilton area. So everybody's going to have to figure out, we're all as a group going to have to figure out how we get enough volunteers to cover all the times of lineage to be covered for judges to play. Take a 12-lane center, you could get away with a judge of play that would sit back at the back watching over the whole championships and not have to worry about ball jams and stuff. At Sherwood, we had to worry about ball jams. Our judges of play were very trying to help out as much as possible to get that lane going. So they were fixing the ball jam here, but after realizing down at 1 and 2, they had a different problem they need to get fixed. So our judges of play have all been told, or will be told by our tournament director, not to worry about ball jams. That's the house responsibility. You don't want to get your fingers caught between the balls or any of that stuff, because you're not getting compensated by the bowling center for that. That's the staff to look after that. The judge of play will be at the back looking at it, saying, okay, 5 and 6 are down right now. While they're fixing that, I can watch the other 10 lanes still. So our plan is to have one judge of play per 8 lanes, somewhere in between the 1 and 6. But what we all need to work together to make sure we got that covered. The problem is that, as we all know, we're there from Wednesday evening, starting about 3 o'clock in the afternoon till 10 o'clock at night, take the last year. So there's a 7-hour block there that we needed 1, 2, 3, 4 judges to play for that time. On the Thursday, started at 8 o'clock in the morning, basically, till 10 o'clock at night. We needed judges to play all the way through on all the different sections for that. And then Friday the same way, and then Saturday, the O5 board of directors were responsible for looking after the singles, or the stepladder championships and the singles. So getting enough judges to play to cover all that stuff is not an easy task. We look about 30 time slots of people needed for that. So if everybody, all the zones could come forward with a judge of play that's certified as to help out next year and years coming, then that would be great as we move forward. The judges of play will be his own responsibility as we move forward. We'll cover it still. I'm saying we, as a group, need to figure out how we cover those judges of play next year and future years. Hamilton had a great base of people available to us between not just Hamilton, but the Hamilton, Niagara, all the surrounding zones helped out with having people available to us to get that done. And a lot of those came in for the day, did their thing, and then off they went after that. And so, but we won't have that same luxury when we're in Ottawa. And the Oshawa area, we may or may not have a similar luxury of that because of the people that lived in those areas. So, just something to think about as we move forward.
If we all supply one judge of play, like let's say somebody comes from Windsor, somebody comes from London to go to Ottawa, is that judge of play responsible for his own expenses for hotel rooms and whatnot?
Right now, that would be that, yeah.
You might have a tough time with that. I mean, if I if I already gotta drive 7.5 hours to get to Ottawa, and then I gotta pay for my own hotel room for the week too, that's gonna be tough.
What my thought on that was is that, yes, we as a group have to cover the cost of that person. Either that person covers it themselves, or we, as a bowlers, as a championship, because remember I said the championship breaks even on its own individual accord, would have to cover some way to compensate them or something. What I was thinking more is, Bob, you're going out as a guest because someone else is, and you're staying with somebody for that week already, you're there. If you're available to help us out, do 1 or 2 shifts, that would be perfect.
Okay.
I'm not saying that we need to have someone come from Windsor and the only thing they're doing is going to be a judge of play.
Okay.
Would there be any opposition to using the emergency spares? Because we have, what, 3 of those typically going anyway? You know, and then hypothetically, if they need to go into bowl, then you just kind of fill in the blanks when you need to fill in the blanks, but every zone sending 3 people.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, but you know what I mean, yeah,
If they decide to
available.
go. Doesn't necessarily mean they know all the rules.
Don't they have to be certified judge of play?
How do you get the certified judge of play?
That's a good
What does that mean?
But that's just, yeah, if we're, I don't know what the numbers are for certified judges of play, but. Right, I don't know how many zones have those, if every zone doesn't have one of those available, that wouldn't be necessarily competing anyway, then this whole argument for them.
Going forward with that idea that John proposed, or we proposed, we would make sure that the accreditation courses were available to those that needed to be trained to get there. Wayne?
Don't let him have don't let him have an opinion.
Back to what Stephen was saying about the judge play course. There was one ran at the convention this summer, but we did find out at the convention that if you contact Rhonda, she can send you out the qualification papers so that you can do a judge play or tournament director papers, and then forward them back into the office. Is that correct?
That's renewal certification.
Kind of.
Renewal only.
That's not fair.
Only on a renewal of a judge of play tournament director's accreditation can you take the,
Okay, just renewal.
just the renewals, yeah. You need to be in attendance at a clinic to get your first time certification. Then from then on in, you can recertify by the mail-in process.
The emergency spare idea is a good idea. We can
Yeah, we're gonna try and discuss that a little further with the emergency spares. There might be a good opportunity there to involve them a little more. Of course, again, it depends on the individuals who are the emergency spares, right? Okay, so that being said, who's in favor of the recommendation from Central that to increase 1 judge play, 1 runner for every 6 lanes? Opposed, if any? The tournament, and that's pretty much unanimous. Sorry, Sue. The tournament has run fairly smooth. Yes, each given year gives you another set of circumstances that get thrown when you've got water leaking through the roof. Act of God. Act of God. As being a proprietor, I understand one day could lead to the next, right? You just never know what the next day is going to deal you. A Metro Toronto motion was put forward that the Ontario Senior Open Championships remove the 6th bowler. Have 5 qualify and 5 bowl like it used to be. Any discussion on that motion?
Take your time, Brian. We're way ahead. Take your time.
I just have a suggestion. Why don't you just leave it up to the zones whether they want to send 5 or 6? Because if somebody gets hurt, you got somebody there. But the ones that are going with 5, If somebody gets hurt, what happens to them? They get 90%? 95?
I think, I don't have to check the rules, but I think you're right.
Yeah, so I would leave it up to the zones whether they want to send 5 or 6 bowlers.
I think we've worked hard at getting the senior numbers up so that we were able to get to the 6th player. Originally, because of the entry levels and not all the zones were participating, it was necessary to go with the 5 players per team. The event grew, and it grew enough that we could add that 6th bowler in. Stephen?
The only reason I disagree with leaving it up to the zone per se is Bob just made a good point. If you have a zone that has 5 strong bowlers, and then the zone decides they don't want to send the 6th bowler just because they have the numbers, but the 6th bowler might not be as strong, I disagree with that. Why would you lessen that person's opportunity to go just because you feel like you'd have a better chance?
It has to be consistent from zone to zone. That's all.
Of course, we've also seen over the years where that 6th bowler never got to play a ball. And that just didn't happen in the senior open.
Oh, yeah.
That happened in the regular open as well. So, yeah, it's some discussion will be obviously made. But for this point, who would be in favor of Toronto's motion to eliminate the 6th bowler? Nobody? All opposed? Seems that's unanimous. The next motion has to do with provincially. It was put on the floor by Central. And that was to change the style of the National Open shirts to prominently display our province and the bowler's name on the back of the shirt.
Wait, we missed one. The high-low doubles.
Yeah, no, we took that out too.
Oh, did we? Okay, sorry.
Does anyone have anything to add to that motion? Bob?
Personally, I think this is a great idea. A lot of zones are doing it now at the Open. With live streaming, it makes it a lot easier for people watching at home to know if, oh, that's Dad bowling, or that's so-and-so from my local bowling alley. I like the idea. I think it's great.
And I think that was Central's intention on putting forward the motion, was because of the live streaming and that it was difficult to see some of who was up on the lane and who they represented. And so we have the ability, of course, as this zone in particular, Middlesex doesn't, you know the cost of those shirts.
Yes.
Yep.
So obviously that's going to increase the cost to send bowlers to nationals.
Well, you don't necessarily have to buy those shirts from that supplier. You could find potentially a local supplier with no shipping.
Here I go again with my administrative hat on. For those who took the opportunity to purchase the Ontario Open, or not the Ontario Open, the Ontario jackets that were custom printed and stuff for us. When we first started that process with the company that we were working with on that, they told us it was a 3 to 4 week turnaround time to turn those jackets around. As it turned out, due to this issue, that issue, or the other issue, it was between 8 and 12 weeks to get the jackets done. So those who had purchased their jackets really early in the season got them at the same time as the ones that were purchasing them much later at the Open. Checking with other suppliers who do the sublimated shirts, everybody is telling me, quoting me right now, between 4 and 6 weeks to do the shirts, delivery time. So I went and looked at the schedule for the Open. The Open is Easter weekend, which we know. The National Championships are 5 weeks away. So the timing of getting the shirts done as a sublimated shirt is going to be really tight.
Have you checked with Mark out west?
Mark, I haven't talked to specifically out west
We
with
got
one.
our coats for the AGM, and I think we got them back in about 3 weeks.
Yeah, so I'll be talking to them.
He
Hopefully,
has
hopefully
pretty
it'll be
quick
that, yeah,
turnaround.
that's the Bronson Group?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I mean, it's pricey, but he has really quick turnaround.
Well, that's why they're adding the price. Well, we can get them jackets done by anybody who's paying more for them.
Yeah.
But how much do we want to pay for a shirt? Do we want to put a $130 shirt on somebody for, that we can get another shirt for 30 or 40 or whatever that number is? But I think I honestly agree with this scenario. That's why we came up with a jacket, and there were certain people that bought the jacket and loved the jacket. Other people looked at it and go, wow, that's way too busy. I'm not going to wear it anywhere else. I didn't want to go to a bowling event. Well, that's the purpose of it, was as a bowling event jacket. So some of the comments were about that it's too busy. Understand everybody's opinion, and they're all very valuable input on figuring out the right thing. So putting a sublimated shirt on of some sort that has Ontario Trillium on it or whatever that is not something that's going to be done quickly. So we have to find the right supplier that's going to say, yes, you give me an order for 25 shirts, I'll have them done for you in 4 weeks. And I got to find the right person to do that. It might be the Bronson Group, it might be someone else.
I think they do most of the shirts for provincial teams.
Sorry about
I'm pretty sure the Bronson Group do a lot of the provincial team shirts. I think, if I remember right, I think at the YBC championships they had shirts on every province there. So I think they would do a real quick turnaround for something like that.
Not that I wouldn't talk with those people about it, because they're definitely doing things for other provinces and stuff. One of our suppliers that we'll definitely look at, but in all due respect to the province of Ontario and the businesses that are in Ontario,
absolutely,
I would love to give business to Ontario if possible.
Yeah.
If it's a supplier, Joe, and I'm going to talk Mariano. If Mariano says, hey, my company can do it, but he ships them to China to be done and gets them back, I'm not going to deal with that company. I'm going to be the Trump here. I'm going to deal with Canadian companies as much as possible. So I don't mean that in a facetious way. I think we need to make sure that we're looking after our businesses and this proprietors who are members of the Proprietors Association, or the bowling centers that we want to have our events at if possible. But that's not always possible. We try as much as we can to do with the Proprietors Association for our provincial championships for sure. But then the lower levels at the zone levels and the other DC level, that may not be able to be done at a proprietor-run member association center. So finding the right spot in Ontario to host or to do their jackets for us would be absolutely the best scenario. If not, we're definitely going to look at that as an option. And that would be my first choice outside of Ontario.
Any more discussion on the shirt idea? Anybody in favor of it? Anyone opposed? All right, we'll go forward with that. That's the end of the formal motions and recommendations that were put forward at the annual general meeting. I want to give each of you a chance now to offer some comments on some of the ideas that were brought out at the first Roadshow meeting in Oshawa. We've noted them on the bottom of that page. The first had to do with senior open scheduling. And I said we would get our opportunity to discuss separating the seniors or not. To be held after the Open as its own event, or before the Open as its own event, as the case may be. Separating the Senior Open away from the regular Open and holding its own championship elsewhere. Or in the same bowling center, doesn't matter. But on a separate weekend, perhaps. Anyone have any offers on that?
I'm good with either.
No. Brian, you want to say anything or no?
I like that second idea, make it a division of the Open.
Make it a division of the Open and be part and parcel of the whole weekend, much as it has been, but make it officially a division of the Open.
That makes it more of another contribute to the aggregate.
Yeah, that's the part of the journey.
It supports that other motion about putting the aggregate points in for seniors.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. Brian, you're not getting any
So I'm hearing support for making the senior open a division of the regular open. Correct? Anyone opposed to that idea? No, not a single soul. Very good. One of the points that was brought out at the Oshawa meeting was that, of course, now what do you do with the qualification years? The past ones, for the past number of years, where the seniors have bowled.
They weren't part of the open.
They weren't part of the open.
So you would start adding their years in, starting when they are part of the open.
Not on camera. Listen,
Sorry, Bob.
Well, they need to see on film.
In past years, they were not part of the regular open, so those years that they qualify wouldn't count towards their years at the open, but it would start going forward. If we make them part of the open this year, then starting this year, those years would count towards their years of service. That saves you all the work of going back and figuring it out.
Typically, that'll be something that I'm sure will be discussed in full at the semi-annual. Because, you know, not only the time to spend adding those qualification years in, which has typically been done by the office staff, but also the cost, because that's going to add a lot of the awards to the presentations. But it's something to be considered, that's for sure. One of the things, too, that we'd like to talk about here is the ad hoc committee with one member from each zone and an O5 board member. And that mandate of that committee to be defined for costs of the event. Random idea that you sell team franchises in place of zone contingents going to the provincials forward. So let's say you had 5 guys or 6 guys that wanted to put a men's team in the men's division. You could buy a franchise and put it in.
But they don't have to be all from the same zone. I could just pick guys from all over the province.
Get up there.
This is the problem with having too many ideas, Bob.
So what you're saying then is I could pick a team of guys from all over the province, put my own team in, and run at the open.
Random idea only.
To pay the franchise, yeah.
That's a horrible idea. I don't think that is, though. That's just become a cash turn. It's not the open.
Well, one of the other ideas that was thrown out at the Oshawa event.
Can you ask Bob to come back up and make that comment now?
Oh, sorry.
Bob.
Make that official.
Make that comment official so that people in the home can see.
Make sure you comment. Cash tournament. Cash tournament.
Oh, I think if you just start picking guys from all over the province, like I could pick, just for a random example, maybe take Steph LaFonce and Jim Thorpe and Terry Little and put us all together as a team. And it just becomes a cash tournament. It's not the open. The open, you're representing your area. So personally, I think that's a horrible idea.
It also breaks down the zone reason for being.
That's right.
You know, this event.
Oh, I wouldn't even get off the bench, man.
I discussed this with John before we opened up the meeting today. This event, in its format, has survived for over 70 years. It was begun back in the early days of the Western Canada 5-Pin Association in this format with men's, ladies, and mixed teams. In Ontario, we were a little slow at the punch and came up, and we started this event the way it sits in 1965. So we've been operating under basically the same format for all these years. In the original days, there was no 8-point games. There was straight up pinfall that decided the championships. But I think it's a damn good event when it's lasted this long. However, I want you to change your thinking just a little bit. let's say that you were Bert Garside back in 1965 and you were deciding what the Ontario Open Championship was going to be. Okay? You've got an empty canvas to paint on. What would you make this championship be?
Spectacular.
But how would you make the teams bowl? How would you qualify them? Think about it a little bit and come up and give me some ideas that come off the top of your head. Dream a little. Nothing is too far from reality once you can just throw out an idea. Maybe it snowballs, and maybe it goes into that great big snowball that we've been running. Anybody have any ideas?
Before that, you got one more on the singles.
Oh, okay. Before we go, I'll give you a couple minutes to think about that, but let's think about this. Someone decided, or someone suggested, that the singles bowl 5 games, and 50% then go on to bowl the next 5 games. That's the way it's been for a number of years now. But let's say that we throw in an idea that if you're within so many pins, you can buy in to bowl the next 5 games, even though that you didn't make the cut. Okay, so there you go. Bob just suggested that everybody should bowl the 10 games, no matter if you're 500 pins out after the first 5 games. You got to remember too, though, when we're bowling with that many people on a lane, it's going to take a little longer. So scheduling becomes a problem.
No,
there you go.
Hang on.
You got it.
I didn't mean everybody that qualifies for the Open. All 3 bowlers from each zone that qualify for singles would bowl all 10 games. So you still got 3 people on a lane. Now it's going to cost more for lineage, I understand that. But, you know, I mean, somebody goes out and throws a couple of 400s in games 8 and 9. They might have been 500 pins back at 5, but they might slip into that 5th spot in the 10th game.
Well, a few times over my years, I threw a 1,500 one day and 1,000 the next, so you never know.
For 10 games each?
No, for 5 and 5. I used to be able to play this game. Not so much anymore.
I'm still thinking.
All right, we still got the minds turning here, so.
You've been in singles more than anybody in this room.
For instance, what if we opened up the singles event so that there was no cut and you bowled all 10 games?
I think it's great.
There you go. There you go.
Now you brought it up.
Here we get you up there eventually.
No.
He's been in it more than anybody in the room.
You know who I am.
As much as I love Bob and everybody bowling 10 games, I don't think it's a good idea. Because you might have some bowlers that are down near the bottom after 10 games, and maybe they don't want to get out of bed and go bowl. So what if they don't show up? Are you going to penalize them because they don't show up and bowl? So, and we are unique, the Open. I love the fact that if you have 42 bowlers, you have to be the top 21 to bowl the second day. You got to strive that first day and work your ass off for those 5 games to make the top half. I love this idea if you want to include a few extra bowlers at the bottom that miss by 1 or 2 pins. If you want to extend down, maybe you get 5 or 6 more bowlers. Whatever you set that number at, whether it be 10 or 20 pins to the cut. I love that idea, but not everybody bowling all 10. The bottom line that we talked about, adding a few extra bowlers, yeah, because all you got to say you get 6 bowlers, you add 1 more pair of lanes. You're still only 3 on a lane, and if you're buying in those people, they're probably going to pay $20, which is going to cover the lineage. And I'm sure that's all you're going to be asking for if that happens. So there's no extra cost for the tournament. Those bowlers that buy in are covering that, but they have a shot to be an Open singles champion. I think the more people you give that opportunity to, the better, the more people are gonna play it.
Kevin, how many pins?
All right, so Terry threw the idea there. How many pins would you want to see a bowler have to be close to the cut to be able to buy in? 25, 50, 100? Mike?
25.
Okay, Mike Thompson suggested 25.
No more than that.
No more than 25.
Just 450, 5 games, that's 250, and that'll cover some increases. 25 pins, not 25%.
25 pins. 25 pins. On 5 games, 5 pins a game. Now we got him thinking now.
Do we have any stats over the last few years, how many extra people would have a chance to buy in if we set a certain?
We're having 5 minutes.
Okay.
Terry, come on.
Have an idea. Have a cutoff point. You don't want to be adding 10 more bowlers or 15 more bowlers. You want to, my guess is you want to add 5 or 6. You don't want to be adding a lot more people to this event. My figure was 20 pins.
I did 5 per game.
4 is good.
Arbitrarily, somebody each year is going to be happy and somebody's going to be sad, even if it's 25 pins.
Either way, there's going to be somebody that's missing by
25, somebody
I can remember missing a cut by 1 pin. It always hurts. It always hurts if you miss. You're happy as heck as if you can get in. Brian?
I don't need the microphone because I'm loud enough.
Too bad. Get on that mic.
I think Terry's got the right idea, and I agree with the gentleman here. If you go 25 pins as a starting point, then at least you got some place where you're basing it on.
Got him working.
We got John working, so we'll get the answer in a second. The Apple product will tell us. Internet would have helped. Oh, okay. Where's your traveling stick?
No service.
No service.
I will get the numbers.
I have the same problem with my bowling center, is that the basement is an enemy, the dungeon.
Old proprietor.
So, there's a couple of good ideas that come out of that, dream a little bit. Anything else you'd like to see the Open become or change to become? Bob?
Just stay up there. Jesus.
First, I guess before we get into too many ideas of how to change the Open, in your minutes online from Oshawa, Tom stated that the format as it stands will not work for NEPs. What all does that mean? Is that just the weekend, just Easter weekend that he can't make work, or is there any other parts of the Open that he can't make work?
Want me to do this or that?
You keep working.
Tom specifically was the scheduling.
So just Easter weekend was his main thing.
If I can speak on behalf of Tom, Tom suggested that it was not entirely a monetary decision, but he's already got events booked for Easter this coming year. And for him to trade that event for the Open, he'd be changing 50 cents for $1. Makes no sense as a businessman. And we have to support Tom for that. Tom's been very good for the Ontario 5-Pin Bowlers Association.
Absolutely.
So the decision basically to go to Ottawa was to keep things as they were, the scheduling and everything, for 1 year till we allow NEBs to grow the event. And this is when Tom just flabbergasted us with, we're building a banquet hall.
So Easter weekend will work for him in 2020 then?
Yes.
Okay, so we're not looking at change. So
But
it was just the
there,
format.
there's some
for-
minor tweaks that will have to take place to make it work in Oshawa. For instance, everybody knows that if they've gone to a tournament in Oshawa, you're going to be spread out amongst many hotels, not one hotel. The banquet hall decision became a big sigh of relief when Tom said that he was building that banquet hall and it would be ready for 2020. God willing.
Hopefully, are your fingers crossed, John?
But even so, there is some options that we can use in the Oshawa area to make the banquet work. Correct? John, you want to say?
So were there any other format issues that he had other than just for next year?
As soon as the idea came down that Sherwood was closing, my first phone call was to Nebs. Literally before we got to the convention, I had already called, annual general meeting. I had called, for those who are at convention, there we go again. For those who are at the AGM know that I had asked everybody to stop calling it the convention and call it our annual general meeting, because that's really what it is. It's not a trade show of different things happening, so it's a general meeting. Talked to Jeff by email multiple times, spent probably 5 or 6 hours at Nebs discussing at a table with Tom, literally pouring out the numbers of what money he makes his association to me personally, asking it to be completely confidential and not talked about, so I won't go any more detail about that stuff. But as he said in his comments on the first video, it doesn't make sense for him to throw away $1 to collect 50 cents. So he gave us the time, Jeff and him gave me the time slots of time that was available. So Wednesday we had time, Thursday we had time, Friday we had time, Saturday we had some time in some lanes, and then Sunday had some time available. Our current schedule, the way we do our Open Championships now, would not fit into that time slots that we had. Since then, we've now been working on different ideas on how to make it work. Some of them work, some of them don't. One idea I came up with, which was an off-the-wall kind of idea, outside of the box thinking, as we're doing with these meetings, was to come up with a different way of running the championships to make it fit into the times that they had available. Doesn't fit either. Even the latest one that was posted on Facebook by John Greenley, I think it was, the singles championships has an issue that we'd have to work out still. So there is no specific real answer that's perfect yet. Getting Nebs to adjust slightly and give us a couple more hours here and there, us adjusting and saying we're not doing it the way we used to, is what's going to have to happen. So 2019, it wouldn't work. There was just no way we could work together to get it done. 2020, this board and you guys as members want to go to Nebs by the sounds of it, so that's what we're going to be making sure it works and gets it. And Nebs wants us there too. They're willing to give up some to make the championships there. As Kevin said, Nebs is going through a huge renovation, upgrading a whole bunch of stuff, changing a whole bunch of stuff. If you're at Nebs in the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks, you'll see his parking lot there's a whole bunch of groundbreaking happening to repave the rest of his parking lot out behind and stuff. That's the first step of multiple steps of them upgrading their facility. He's building a building over top of his entertainment building, which is at the west end of the building, and then the internal building inside of that is being taken down. Tom's mind is amazing. His ideas and concepts he comes up with. Everything he's built is built from the ground up. Is not hanging off the building that's there, so he can take the old building out afterwards. One of the ideas is to build a whole concourse where there's going to be a 500-person seating for a banquet. That's planned 2 years from now, maybe 3. I don't know the exact timing because Mother Nature and government facilities and getting permits and all that stuff can cause trouble. But our biggest problem was timing this year based on making sure his leagues were looked after and the space that was there. The other big issue that we as an organization have to look at is currently we charge people to go to the Open Championships to go into the bowling center. Nebs is a entertainment complex. It's not just a bowling center anymore. So as such, the parking spots that he's got need to be for everything happening at his facility, not just the bowling. And there's multiple doors to get into Nebs. So for us to put Kevin at one door and Bob at another door and Brendan at another door, and Mariana walks in and says, I'm not paying you $3 to go play in the go-karts. We can't do that. So that won't be available to us to do that part. So our budgeting changes now because any door receipts we got aren't available to us anymore. Lots of things changed, but we're working on it. I've probably spent 30 hours working with Nebs and scheduling so far. A lot more to go. Don't mind doing it, that's why I'm here. Because I think you guys are all the same way as me. We love this sport, we don't want it to die. We're doing everything we can to make sure it stays here. So that's just a quick update on the Nebs.
So I think it's very exciting that, you know, yes, we've had 30, 38, 39 years at Sherwood. It's been a great ride, but now that ride changes, and we're going to have to go forward with it. So one year in Maryville, in the PN, the nation's capital, I realized that from this end of the province, it's going to be a difficult thing to schedule and maneuver. But for 1 year, the second time in our history of the Ontario Provincials, we're going to Ottawa. And they've been coming this way for how long?
It was there before, at some point?
Yeah, 1967, the Ontario Championships were held at Queensway Bowl. And that was with 24 zones. Remember those days? And speaking of which, that gives me a good lead-in. Another idea that was thrown at the Oshawa Roadshow was the makeup of the Ontario 5-Pin Bowlers Association is presently 14 zones. How do we ensure that the 14 zones are strong and active and being able to provide the bowlers for the events that we put on? Maybe it's time to look at the overall picture and don't get upset or throw things at me, but maybe it's time to break away from the existing zones and repaint the whole picture of Ontario. And maybe not so much geographically, but maybe by lane beds, so that each zone is fair in competing with the number of bowlers they can produce, pay for. This is something that, you know, we've talked about in back rooms over and over again, but maybe it's something that we have to put an ad hoc committee together to study. Making a fair way to make our zones up, or regions, to go to a provincial. Any discussion on that? Stephen?
I agree with the thinking, because, you know, it works out, but the reality is bowling alleys are dropping off the map like flies, right? So you can do something now, and then 5-10 years down the road, you're going to be in the same boat. So regardless of the discussion that happens and the decision that happens, it's something that, you know, short to long term, you're going to have to deal with again.
Oh, for sure.
If we're going to look at redoing the zones, we can't just look at the open. We have to look at all of our tournaments, because there are a number of zones who have a lot of competitors in the POA tournaments, but are having trouble getting numbers out for the open. They don't have the scratch bowlers, but they've got tons of POA bowlers. So you can't take a zone and just say, okay, we gotta try to make the open more even and more competitive, because you may hurt some of those zones in their POA.
That committee exists already.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, operating.
Yeah, we have a committee that's looking at the zones and zone boundaries, etc. And those ideas will be brought out when that committee is ready to report.
We did.
Sue?
One of my bowlers. Yes.
I know.
Sorry. Okay. I had one of my boys approach me the other night when he found out what was happening. He wondered about suggesting going, now this is for provincial, going east and west. And then when sending the winners from those two areas on to the provincial. Everybody understand what it's like? Like you split, all right, east and west.
Two semi-provincials, then going to one provincial, the
Right,
two winners.
exactly.
It's like the
It
old
would cut-
east-west days in the C5.
Yes. Now we're aging, thank you. But it was a suggestion made by him, I told him I would bring it up. Not saying I agree with it, but that's it. That's my suggestion, it would cut your.
For the open.
For the open, that's what this was supposed to all be about. For the open only, definitely. It would cut your numbers of traveling, expenses on the O5 site.
You could also
You've
run
got
in
to.
smaller houses too.
And you could run it in smaller houses, right?
Regionals are around 87.
No, it's you know, this is what this forum is for, is to share these ideas, and you're bringing the ideas out from those that play the event, right? We can also, and I was really surprised in Oshawa that the idea was never thrown back out on the floor about regionalizing.
No.
Nobody wants that.
But it's one of those concepts that maybe has to be revisited in the future as the numbers shrink. Maybe for the open, you know, Bob had a good point about, you know, there's lots of good entry at the POA level. And we don't want to break down, we've got good participation in the Holiday Classic, the triples, et cetera, et cetera. We don't want to break down the zones to do that, but maybe the open has to be looked at in order to field a more competitive team for the different areas. You know what I'm saying? Like, the regions were set up back in 1988 as a stopgap that year to try something. And the resounding feedback the following year led us back to changing it back to the way it was. Typically then, 30 years ago, it wasn't a good idea. But now our numbers have changed significantly. Maybe it's an idea to look at again in the future. And I'm not saying we're going to, but it's something that we should probably consider. You know, to make a Western Ontario region, an Eastern Ontario region, a Central East, a Central West, like we did with the Youth Challenge, to go to Winter Games. Any comments?
Show of hands. Kevin, show of hands and move forward on that idea or not.
Okay.
So what are you looking at? You're looking at doing like four different regions?
Don, microphone.
Don, come on up. I'll lead the discussion further with your comment first.
What are you imposing? 4 different regions? Is that like? You'd have to do assessments like that, I would think. You know, go with 4 different. You said Western, Eastern, Central, and go that route.
At this point in time,
Could be anything.
it could be anything. I'm saying, like I said when I led into this, I said you've got a blank canvas now. Create your picture. What does it look like? What does it look best for the open going forward in the future? Is it staying with our zones? Is it changing to regionals? Is it opening it up to franchises? I'm sure there's a number of bowling centers here that could send 5 or 6 men on a team, 5 or 6 ladies on a team, buy the franchise and put them in the provincials. But it destroys everything that we've built up over the last 50, 60 years. But it's something that we should maybe consider for the future the next 50, 60 years down the road.
Now, if you're going franchise, are you thinking about after we have a roll-off, and then they buy themselves in, after the qualifying?
Could be a combination of both. You might have open teams bowling from your zone and then buying in franchises to compete against those teams that have qualified.
Geez, we can't find a house big enough to run what we got.
There was the other idea that was thrown out, if you watched any of the meeting from Oshawa, was changing the singles event to anybody that bowled at the zone level, buying into the singles event at provincials. $100, $100, $200 entry, sharing a pot of money for the championship. Come on up, Steve.
Doing that kind of goes against what Terry proposed earlier. If you're just going to allow anybody and everybody to go in, it takes away that strive to make it to the next part. So I disagree with that.
But some of these ideas are floating out there. They're worthy of some discussion. Again, going back to what do you see for the future? Are we going to just keep sitting back and letting things fall apart? Despite our best efforts, because we're all working very hard at this game to try and keep it afloat. That's the reason why we're here today. Look around you. There's a lot of people here that want to keep this game going. As a provincial board, we are working for what you want. Yes, sometimes we have to step in and say what we think's best. But for the most part, we want to act on what our members want. We want to go forward with those members' ideas and thoughts and dreams.
Personally, I feel that in order to build the Open, you need to build the POA division to an extent, because the only way you're going to get elite bowlers is building up your POA bowlers. Nobody just comes out of the gate as just a 270 shooter. It's just, you know what I mean? It takes work, it takes practice. They were POA bowlers at some point. My other point on that is a lot of times I feel personally that starts at a zone level. If you have a zone that all your elite bowlers, for lack of a better term, are dinks, you're not going to build up your POA standpoint. None of those bowlers are going to want to bowl with those bowlers because of that. Whereas if you get a zone where it's very encouraging, it's very this, it's very that, those bowlers will strive to be better bowlers because they want to bowl with those bowlers that have been encouraging them in this and this and this. And I think that starts at a very small area and then goes to the bigger picture.
Just to add to Stephen's comment there about the POA bowlers, the O5 has been running, I found this out of the AGM, an experimental tournament, similar to the Henry Fair Tournament Masters runs, where you have a scratch bowler and a POA bowler bowling together. I think it's expanding this year, and they're potentially down the road going to run it similar to the other tournaments. That will do exactly what you're asking. If you've got somebody with a 150 average bowling with a 250 average, they're going to go, okay, if I work hard at my game, maybe I can get there.
No, that's a great idea that's going forward. I'm going to date myself a little bit too.
What tournament is that he's talking about?
It's an event that's run by the BPA.
Mitch is running it in, right?
And in Ontario, it started in a couple of test centers. And it got some good rave reviews of the average elite bowler being able to bowl with an elite bowler. And it's something that's going to be explored further this coming season.
Niagara and Ottawa are doing it as well.
Yes, Niagara and Ottawa are doing it this year as well.
Because I'm bowling at scratch, I'm not bowling people.
If you allow me a couple of minutes, ma'am.
And then your pins over average gets added to my scratch.
Thinking back, a number of years ago when the Open was basically growing out of a sponsorship from Carling O'Keefe. Remember those days? There was a similar event run right beside the Open. It was called the Classic. The 210 and under.
Yep.
Became the Sun Bowl. Now it is called the Holiday Classic. But that tournament's been around as long as the Open. And it was meant to be a driving point for the lower average bowlers to go on and come and bowl in the Open, because it was run in conjunction with the Open. At the Nationals, it was run at the same time. There was one house running the 210 and under, the other one was running the Open, and it was run nationally that way. And it wasn't dead until the sponsor had to get out of our game, because otherwise it would have kept going that way. Wait.
Yeah, just going back to the idea of running in different regions, would it also lead to a decline in bowlers qualifying in different areas? Because they would say, oh, okay, well, I'm in with this area, and I know I'm not going to be able to compete with the class of bowlers I'm going to be in, so why would I go in? I think it would, by using regions, it's going to decline your total number of entries. I think in our own zone, if we moved out and say we had to compete against some of the western region, we would lose some bowlers bowling. They would drop out because they, why should I bowl when I know I don't have a chance?
Well, let me stipulate too, Wayne, that by no means has there been anything concrete put down into thinking about regionalizing. It was just one of those ideas we throw out for discussion. It hasn't been discussed formally at any point. But it's one of those ideas that need to be nurtured or not, depending on the feeling of the membership. We don't need to do it if the membership isn't in favor of it. But if it's something that saves the Open, maybe we have to look at it. Okay, Mama. I knew that eventually she would.
Alrighty, couple of questions. Pat Judson, Western, if they accept me. I guess the question I have, in the Western provinces and the Eastern provinces, are they facing some of the decline in bowling centers closing like we are in Ontario? Across Canada. Are they going by zones? Are they facing the same meetings that we are facing here at the present time to try to save our sport? And while we're talking about the Open and saving the Open players and whatnot, we also have to consider the youth bowlers coming up, because there's a number of the youth bowlers that are graduating and they love to get into the Open tournament, such as the Michaelas, the Alleys last year, just some of the names I'm picking up. If it's time to go east versus west and make something strong for them, we got to really daydream here and try to come up with something that is going to save. If we're getting short on lady bowlers and the seniors are growing, now I'm just dreaming here, is it time to be able to add more mixed teams and more seniors teams to the event and go with men? There's a lot of men that are trying out. If you don't make the men's team, they've only got, what, 3 men on the mixed team? Maybe it's time to add in another mixed team if we can. Is there places out there that's having problems getting enough ladies to still field the ladies team plus the mixed team? Maybe it's time to eliminate the ladies team, and I'm just saying, like, for who knows how we're going to divide up across Ontario, and add extra mixed teams. Just thoughts, just thoughts.
No, that's a great idea too to look at, considering the fact that, you know, maybe the Open becomes nothing but a mixed team championship. Senior mixed team, mixed teams.
What's the West looking at? Are they still okay?
I think John and Sue will have a better idea when they get to the AGM in August at Ottawa, as to, you know, and some of these things are going to be thrown out by our delegates at the Canadian meeting for thoughts and food for discussion at their level. So if we're thinking about it, they're thinking about it. Many of the problems in the Western provinces always have been the cost for the number of bowlers they had to send teams and bowlers to nationals. It became those that could afford to come rather than the little guy. In Ontario, we're still funding the little guy. We're one of the only provinces that still pay for our national competitors to go to the nationals. Some of the other provinces are still making the user pay. So that's the strength of being an Ontario bowler. John?
Okay. Provincially, across Canada, there's Ontario and I think Alberta and one other province do similar things that we do. We hold zone roll-offs, come together and declare our champions, and from that, send them to the national championships. Lots of the other ones do an all-star type scenario where the bowlers just show up, bowl a championship, and they might be in a different format of a tournament than they are. But they still do a roll-off to get their 10 games in qualifying to participate. And from there, they create their men's team, their ladies team, and their mixed team. Out of all the provinces, every province has a men's team. Half the provinces, a little more than half of it, I think it's 8 provinces last year had ladies teams, and a majority of them have mixed teams as well. So the time now, the idea possibly is if we go to the regional format, and we're all talking in general terms here, there's no specific one idea that's better than another, but the idea of a regional roll-off where there's 8 teams of 8 mixed teams showing up at it, 2 mixed team from a zone, a men's team, and no ladies team from a zone. Maybe that's the way we go in the future somewhere down the road. Just throwing out as ideas. But when you get to the provincial championships, there's no way still that we could say that there's going to be 28 men or mixed teams there, 7 ladies teams and 14 men's teams. Doing a roll-off for that, or provincial championships for that, would be tough. But doing a regional roll-off, which happened in 87 or 88? 88. I do know, looking at the numbers of the entries that year, it went way down. People didn't like the idea, and literally it was a 1-year situation. We changed back because Sherwood wasn't available to us, and there was no other bowling center in the area that NEBS at that time wasn't available to us in any way, shape, or form, and we weren't going all the way to Ottawa at that time. The other scenario is going back to Terry's suggestion about 25-pin difference. Looked at the last 2 years I had available with me on it. The rest of it's on my drive at home. It was less than 3 people on each side, men's and ladies, so that would work perfectly. That would get us from 21 to 24. So 20, 25, whatever that number was, is relatively close. So there's a whole bunch of great ideas. What I really like about the first 2 roadshows we've had so far, and I'm presuming the other 2 will be the exact same way, is it's not you against us or me against you. It's us trying to figure out what bowling's going to do to keep the sport alive and running. And the great thing is that nobody's comment that anybody's made is we've all gone, what are you talking about? That's not possible. It's a starting point to move forward to find what the right solution is. Terry may make a comment that I think is completely off the wall, but then now Mariano makes a comment to that, and now it brings a new ball rolling down the road of new ideas. It creates this great big huge snowball, and everybody goes, wow, this is great. How did we get to that? Well, we got to that because of all of us working together, and I appreciate everybody's efforts so far. So, back to you.
Anybody else have any other ideas to share? Brian?
You know I do.
Of course. And that's why we love you.
You don't have to be around it that much.
If we're gonna do the aggregate for the seniors, as be part of the Open and they become a division of the Open, can we not put a mixed team in the Nationals?
Here. I agree.
Okay, you did hear that they've only got 8 teams in
other
ladies.
places, but I just want to put it out there as that is. I mean, just a show of hands here, how many guys would compete, or ladies, would compete on a seniors team to go to a Nationals? There's your response.
But it's not just about Ontario, Brian.
No, I know.
No, certainly. And,
I know all the provinces struggle to get numbers, but
it's something that the Ontario delegates can take to the national and say this is a growing concern of our membership. That we want to add a national division on the Open of the seniors. Don?
It's one of our points we're taking to Ottawa for sure.
Just one small thing. We have a Masters Association here in Ontario. They never have a problem sending a national to, like a senior team to a nationals. Like, why is it?
Because all the provinces send a team.
Yeah, all the provinces. Scratch the POA.
All the provinces have to send a team to be able to have a national event.
You were just gonna say that the ladies only had 8.
That's right. Like,
So
if the Masters could, if the Masters could send
a ladies team, how many provinces
senior
are
team
going
to
to send
nationals,
I mean,
and
that's
all the
something
other
that has to be
provinces
considered.
are on board doing that, why can't the O5 do that?
Because it's the C5.
Well, it's a governing body, right? Now you have to be a member of the O5 to participate at the master level.
Good comment. Yes, I agree. It is mandatory that, from my understanding, is that for the Masters to participate at the Nationals, they have to be card-carrying members of the Provincial Association. But back on our side for why we don't have a seniors division, the lady sitting down in the front here with her white sweater on is shivering. But Brenda, the temperatures here is great. That's my voice is a little. My voice is a little cold.
It's cold.
The way it is because of the coldness as well. But it's you know what, I would prefer this over being 99 degrees outside. So back to the C5 and the reason the C5 doesn't have a seniors division at this time. It took Ontario, Brenda specifically, but in Ontario it took us 4 years to get the seniors division set up and running. When it first started, it was not every province or every zone participating. It took another 4 years, I think it was, before all the zones participated. So since that time, the Ontario has, on an ongoing basis, at every one of the AGM and SAGM meetings of the C5, hounded the members about them getting their seniors division. Problem is, some of the provinces and territories are lucky to get enough to just to hold a mixed team in the Open Championships. So it's not that we can't do it. It's and as I heard a couple people say about it, we don't need every province participating in it. But if we can get 4 or 6 provinces participating in it to start with, maybe we can get it pushed through and get started on it. Yeah, the Masters have done it, and their funding is done differently, and it's a totally self-paid organization. This organization is everybody is paid for by participating in the events and stuff, which is great. So it definitely is one of those points of interest that we're going to be putting forward through when we go to the C5 meeting. There's a couple other ones that are come up through the meetings that we want to make sure get put forward as well. The idea of the record scores being changed for leagues that bowl 2 frames at a time and then alternate was spearheaded between PEI and Ontario, and that got approved, but it took 4 years to get that approved. So it's not something that's easily done because the membership, the 12 provinces, 10 provinces and territories together work to figure out where the sport goes as we move forward. So we're fighting on your behalf. I've heard from you guys specifically that the idea of a seniors division in the open makes sense. The Roadshow, when we were in Oshawa, had the same show of hands. So it's definitely an idea that we're going to be pushing forward for you on your behalf.
There you go, Brian.
Did it.
You've got support,
I don't wanna hear about it again.
Quit hounding me every week.
I mention it to Bob every week.
I don't think it's any different in any of the other zones. It's something that's wanted because if you look at, I'll speak as a proprietor here for a second, and Stephen and Mariano will probably support this, that our elite business is pretty much 80% seniors. And the more that we can push senior events, the happier our customers are going to be. So, one of the suggestions that I got nudged after the Oshawa meeting was we should put a POA division in the seniors event. I said, well, there's plenty of opportunity for POA competition, but there's only one scratch event. So, while it's a good idea to entertain, it probably won't fly with the Senior Open Championship. And the Masters has the POA component to it for the seniors, right? So, personally, I'd like to see the Senior Open event always be a scratch event. Continue on that way. You've been very quiet, Mariano.
He's thinking.
Answer me this.
Okay.
No,
Microphone.
Can you come on up and give us some perspective? You've been around a long time too.
This is just going to derail the conversation, but I'm still going back to. You said the Open at one time was a total pinfall tournament. Teams competed on pins knocked down versus 8 points a game.
Yeah.
What was the basis for changing to 8 points a game? Just to smooth level of the blocks?
No. The concept of the 8-point game really came about with the introduction of the coaching program. The coach now had an integral part of that team, rather than excuse the expression, pour drinks for the team members.
Somebody's got to do it.
So with the creation of the coaching program in the late 70s and the creation of the Canadian 5-Pin Bowlers Association, the 8-point game was a strategy method to involve the coach in the decisions of the team. He had to pick a lineup, still stressing that the 3-point game at the end of the bottom of the line was the most important, the 3-point for the total pinfall. But it was a creation and a very good one. The 8-point game was a very great creation for the Open Championship. But yeah, it came out of the growth of the Certified Coach program.
Because I think to the viewing public, total pinfall is much more intuitive. But your point is well taken. Thank you. Totally different.
God, I was hoping I would get him up here to give us some more, but come on, give us your thoughts of the bowling world and the open play in particular. From your standpoint, you've been a proprietor a long time. I've not been a proprietor as long as you. Tell us from your side of the fence how you see this association going and moving.
One of the questions I've been dying to ask is how many we've got 14 zones in the province, how many of those are on the precipice? I know Western is kind of on the bubble. I think we've got 154 members at large and 1 DC with a couple hundred. So it's very weird makeup for Western. And I understand the fears of the gentleman here from London, Mid-Elgin. You know, people are afraid of some type of future zone realignment. So I'm wondering, how bad is it? How soon is a zone realignment or some other type of scheme going to? How soon are we going to face this? I'm also, with regard to the open, wondering. I guess it's just going to be a one-year blip going to Ottawa. I'm really concerned about how that's going to affect the local zone qualifiers. I'm thinking, man, down our way, I think we might lose 30%. Nobody's fault. I mean, you've made a logical decision. I'm not sure you had any options. And to those who attend the event, it's probably going to be pretty good at Bearvale. And I've been there before. It's a nice bowling center. But I'm really concerned about the local qualifying.
Those are valid concerns. Any comments?
I guess it's a proprietor concern. You know, you like to have bodies at a zone roll-off.
Well, you faced it in Windsor, and I've faced it over the last couple of years in even my locality, where we've lost 2 major bowling centers. And I'm happy as the pig in the dirt, because I gained 5 leagues out of those closing centers, but I hate seeing closing centers, because that means there's less people playing, because for every one of those 5 leagues I got, or the 100 extra bowlers, probably twice that quit, and they're no longer playing the sport. And that's really our dilemma as proprietors.
And it's not just peculiar to 5-pin, is it?
No, by no means. 48 lane 10-pin center, 2 minutes from my place, closed down. How many thousands of bowlers lost their place to play? And that was a major Brunswick center. And they made a decision 3 years ago to lease out their recreation division to an operating leasing company. That leasing company got an offer from a grocery store chain to turn the bowling center into a grocery store. All of a sudden, 48 lanes of 10-pin bowling are gone for 2,000 some league members. And they didn't find a place to play. I would say probably a quarter of them are still playing. So, not only 5-pin, 10-pin, you're right. In the mecca of the 10-pin world down in Windsor.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Biggest bowling center in Canada.
So, how do we create new bowlers? How do we create new members? We got to get some more
media coverage.
Well, media coverage is tough, because we're the blue collar sport that nobody pays attention to. We do.
Government does.
Government does. The media is our biggest battle, because the media would rather. Let me share a story that happened with me in my former role as with the Canadian 5-pin. And I don't know how many people know this story, but I've shared it a number of times. We were faced with the marketing decision from the Canadian 5-pin standpoint. We hired a company called St. Clair Marketing to go out and find us a sponsor or someone that could pay for the TV coverage of the national championships on TV. And to create for us a marketing campaign that was similar to what the Canadian Curling Association was going through. Everybody knows how the curling has grown leaps and bounds over the past 20 years on television. Gone are the days of Ed Wernick, where they look more like the curling stone than they are now, because they're all fit athletes, right? Like, these guys they could probably step into any sport and be a star. We asked St. Clair Marketing to find us that sponsor too, that could take us over the top and give us, 26 weeks of TV coverage. Put us on front and center. And they were excited because our numbers on the CBC Championship 5-pin bowling show and the TSN game outdrew Hockey Night in Canada numbers. And those numbers were fabulous. The problem was the numbers that were watching our TV shows were seniors who virtually had no buying power. And that buying power wasn't conducive to sponsorship for TV. So that idea died real quick. And we found out with a slap in the face, the bowling was going nowhere in the media because this is the aura that we have created for ourselves, and that's the aura that the sponsorship dollars were looking at. Not to say we couldn't change it, and they said if we changed our image, our buying power, they would gladly put us on television. But they couldn't sell the commercials. Because there was only so many commercials for Depends diapers. Sadly. We have to get younger. We have to get into the younger market.
But how do you get into the younger market if you're not on TV? That's right. Right? That's right.
And that's the job of the Proprietors Association.
And us working with them.
Us working alongside with them to promote their marketing prowess. One of the big problems that I have, and I don't know whether that problem exists in smaller towns and cities, is that the number of new Canadians coming through the door. They take one look at my game, the 5 pins, the small ball, this is kids bowling. Walk out the door, they're looking for 10 pin. This is one of the big jobs that I want to see the Proprietors Association take on, is a marketing campaign to inform the new Canadians that there's another game in town. That the 5-pin game is as big and as vibrant as the 10-pin game in Canada. Most of my advertising that I do, and that's now mostly online, has to do with social media. And I'm spreading that word that we are the small ball game, we're not the big ball game, we're not the American game. We are the 5-pin game. This is a Canadian game. Come and try us. We're just as much fun. And that's what I'm trying to do from my only little 8-lane bowling center, trying to spread the word to all the masses of new Canadians that have come into Toronto and Mississauga, that we have to know that we're around too. And if we can get more of the proprietors doing that, the word will spread, and we'll get new people coming into the game. Any comments? Steven?
I will agree with that statement 100%. Social media is an unbelievable asset right now. Being in my position, and I've got a very older proprietor that isn't tech savvy whatsoever, I had countless people coming through the door saying, you know, I found you on Google, but it says you're always closed. That's because Google auto-generates a location for you based on everything. And unless you go in and alter it physically, it's just going to default to whatever. So I've had countless customers now, since I've taken it upon myself to change those hours and be part of the online presence. It really is a true statement, right? Your Facebook presence, your Instagram, if that's what you do, right? Even Google, just everybody in the brothers Googling stuff, just to find stuff.
Steve, can you explain Google to Brian? You don't want that explanation?
Google knows everything. Does anybody else have any thoughts or ideas they want to bring up before we let this thing go back over to John and close out for the day?
I think it was Tom England at the last Roadshow that suggested a sponsor to help out with the provincials, and he suggested Labatt's. Now I understand we can't have alcohol or tobacco sponsors, but it doesn't have to be Labatt's. Do we have anybody with connections, or there's got to be somebody in the bowling world with experience setting up sponsors for events. There are a lot of companies out there that still sponsor events. Just thinking like, you know, if we're going up to $4.50 for lineage, if we could get a sponsor to offset some of the cost of the lineage, then that can trickle back down to our entry fees being cheaper, making it cheaper all across the board.
Your favorite
There's an easy way of saying this, and there's a tough way of saying it. The easy way of saying it is, yes, we would love to find a sponsor. The tough problem is finding that sponsor. Brenda's group, and working with my wife as part of a co-chair, they've come up with a sponsorship program for our association that's got just over $6,000 in sponsorship in the last couple of years for our association. There's a gold, platinum level, gold level, silver level, and a bronze level. And that's growing as we've gone year to year. I don't think we've actually gone out and said to everybody, hey, why don't you become one of our sponsors as a specific one? In the past, the association looked at it that let's find a corporate sponsor that could look after the event and be the new person looking after our, whatever that event is. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, you guys started doing the sponsorship stuff, about 6 years ago? The idea was thrown out instead of having one huge corporate sponsor that becomes a namesake associated with it. And we've had people like Sid Morris, Carlene O'Keefe, what's your friends? Old Credit Brewing. I don't know why I remember that name. The beer's good. But from a corporate point of view, it's hard to find those sponsors out there. The ones that are out there that can do that type of stuff still, that have sponsorship dollars available, are in the liquor and beer and wine industry. We as a sport, as recognized by the Ontario government, receive funding from the Ontario government as a sport. So this belly doesn't get funded by the government anymore for its beer intake and stuff, and they never did. But I'm just saying, as Kevin made the comment earlier, is that the curlers out there today that are on TV don't look like this anymore. They look more like a slimmer person who is more fit. So getting sport, the government still gives us money that we put towards our youth programs and the stuff we do at that end, and towards some of our other enhancements of our coaching program and all that type of stuff. But as soon as we come up with a corporate sponsor that says beer associated with it, or wine associated with it, or liquor, they look at us and go, you guys are now a social game, and off you go that way. We got a new government in place now. We have to be even that much more prevalent on what we're doing, because we have to make sure that it doesn't happen. Doesn't mean that a Kevin or a Mariano or Stephen or any other proprietors that we got out there don't say to us, hey, I'm going to sponsor you guys, but they have a beer sponsor sponsoring them, which is what Tom is looking at, doing that kind of concept instead. But we can't specifically say that Labatt's is a corporate sponsor of the Ontario Flag and Bowlers Association. But we can say Nebs is a corporate sponsor of the Ontario Flag and Bowlers Association. Does that make sense on the semantics of stuff? So as we move forward, yes, we would love to have a corporate sponsor, or 2 or 3 or 6, but a whole bunch of $100 sponsors or $250 sponsors or $500 sponsors are just as good in the long run as well. So I'm going to toot the horn for you, Brenda. Anybody who wants to throw $100 in and have your name put into the book, which we've got a whole bunch there in our book already to receive sponsorship notifications, feel free to come and see Brenda and say, hey, I would love to be a $100 sponsor, or a $250 sponsor, or $500, or even a $1,000 sponsor. We've got 2 corporate sponsors, which is my company, TRG Computers, and the Government of Ontario. TRG Computers does a whole bunch of other back-end stuff. My business partner thinks I work more for the Ontario 5 than I do for my company. He's on holidays this week, so I got a lot of spare time to do work for bowling. I hope he doesn't get to see this video.
I was just going to say that.
It will be online, yes. But not in all seriousness, is coming forward and saying, let's get a sponsor for something, or let's do this to save the association, or let's do this. Until we've put together all the steps underneath that, we're all sitting here saying, hey, that's a great idea, but how do we build that? Because that's the hard part, is getting that together. And working together like we are now, I think that's the way we're going to get there. These roadshows, and there's even a thought of possibly adding an extra roadshow in, because one part of the province we may have missed. So we may want to throw a 5th roadshow in to cover that, but that's going to be talked about by the board to make that decision to figure out if it fits into the budget. So as we move forward, Your input is fabulous. It's greatly appreciated. I know you're all passionate about the sport, just like I am, and the board of directors and the proprietors. It's their business, so they want us here doing this stuff for them. And as Kevin said, yes, it's a proprietor's responsibility to keep people in the bowling center, but it's our responsibility to make sure they come in as well. We have to work together, and Tom made that comment during the opening comments of the last week's, or the one on Monday at NEBS. So we have to work together. I'm talking, Steve, on behalf of the board or the members here today, appreciate the Fairmont lanes opening up and allowing us to come in here today at no cost to us. Greatly appreciated. So, if anybody has anything else to talk, I'm open to listen. Brenda's got her checkbook, or not her checkbook, but she's got her deposit book open, waiting for anybody that wants to come and give money. But I'm just joking about that stuff. But seriously, if you really want to do that, then there is a way of doing that. We can get you added to the books. Kelly.
I don't know.
Come over.
In regards to sponsorships, Brenda, I didn't realize, first I've known that sponsorships are out there for people. As chair of a few other committees, sit on some boards, I'm in the process, I put together a tournament for golf coming up for Crime Stoppers. And we do a whole sponsorship. And so for the Open, if everybody approaches would you like to sponsor a lane? And that lane gets identified. This lane is sponsored by your company. For us, it's free money. It's $125 to sponsor a hole. Your name is on the golf course for every person. So every person walks by that hole sees your company, as opposed to it's in a book somewhere. Because I've never seen a book with a list of a lot of sponsors without really looking. So it's visual. And then people that spectate say, oh wow, we'll get to that business. And it brings business. I mean, that's just a thought when it comes to sponsoring. I put the recognition out there at the Open. These are our sponsors, and maybe they actually get their name assigned to a lane. You know, that's just a thought on fundraising abilities. Another thing is reaching out to the kids. That's a big thing, getting into the youth. What if a presentation was put together on bowling and then get into the grade schools in the local areas and present, you know, a little bit of a synopsis. I used to do this as a trainer for the CAW, where we would go into schools and talk about environmental stuff, and you bring the kids in and you get that hook in. And then you've got it in conjunction with a bowling center. And then a part of it would be, oh, here's a certificate to go to your local bowling center and try a game.
Yeah, I think a lot of proprietors do that.
Yeah. But I mean, if you get a group of people going in, and this is, oh look, this is Terry, he's from our area, this is where he's been. Build it, because it's not a, you know, a lot of parents, I go, oh, 5-pin, it's like, you know, where can they go with 5-pin? They're not going to get a contract to be a NHL player or a Major League Baseball player. So we really have to talk up the sport with our kids. No, I'm good. I'm done now.
Brenda, I think Kelly had a good idea there. Looking at finding a way to put sponsorship names on lanes, but
We have tried that.
yes, a couple things that we're doing, the marketing committee is doing that you may or may not have seen is that at the Open Championships and at all of our provincial championships, Brenda prints off calendar or pictures or posters of all the sponsors, and they're published all over the place. Lots of times people just look at it as a piece of paper on the wall. As I don't know if anybody read the signs on the bowling center's doors as they came in today, but probably not. But they are there if someone wants to read them. We do publish our own up as well. Getting the sponsors in as sponsors is a tough thing, and it's always going to be a tough thing because it's me as a business owner. I look at it and go, yeah, I probably have 10 calls a week, not that many, 10 calls a month of people looking for sponsorship for golf tournaments, and they're using different lines of ways to get money now, and that's the sponsors or the people that are going after the funding of that is doing that, is coming up with unique ways of coming up with the same answers. Problem is, there's only so much money any one corporation has or business has, and once they've hit that number, or they pick whatever their organization their funding it is, I'm not going to say it on camera, I'll say it to anybody else once afterwards, but when somebody calls my business about something, I give them a specific name and they shut up and they hang up and say, okay, we're not done with you. And I'll tell you that name off camera because I don't want someone to know that because they'll say, oh, you're just pulling my leg. But my heart and soul of my business is 5-pin bowling, and I'll put anything into it I can to help it whenever I can. There's other people out there that pick whatever their organization they deal with is. You're doing it with the groups you're working with and stuff for the golf tournaments and stuff. So one idea that I'm going to throw it out here as an idea now is my local baseball team, slow pitch team, co-ed slow pitch team, is looking at the idea of possibly next season running a baseball tournament for members of 5-pin bowling that have to have 50% of their members on the team members of the 5-pin bowling that's current year. And we've already got some sponsors that are willing to work with that have nothing to do with bowling, but they would be new into the thing, and it would be the Ontario 5 putting forward that idea as a concept. So it's I know there's lots of baseball players, slow pitch players, or fastball players. Fastball players, I'm way past that prime, so I wouldn't be doing that. But the slow pitch is a social game I still like and enjoy. But I do that during the summer. It doesn't affect my bowling stuff. I'm here now. I've got to play baseball tonight at 8:45. So I have to be out of here by 6 o'clock to get there. So I know I'll make that, or should be able to make that. But in all honesty and everything else, I do appreciate everybody's efforts. The board of directors are here working on your behalf. We spend numerous hours that you probably never know about for the things that we do. But we do it on behalf of the members and want to do it on behalf of you guys. So it's your guidance and ideas and suggestions that make this sport better and greater as we move forward. The Open, we got a bit of a blip we're working on. We're working together on it. We'll find a solution, we'll get through it, and we'll keep on moving forward. So in that, anybody else have any other comments, or are we going to wrap it up now? Yeah? Sue, come on up here, please.
Official form.
All right. What I'm saying is not to do with supporting it or whatever. I would like to know, on your behalf, why was it taken out of the O5, or the open book, the coaches, like the qualifying the number of years that they have coached? Why are they not getting that recognition anymore?
You're talking about in the book?
In the books, yes. It's just for the Open.
The Open program book is based on 4 pages at a time being part of the book. So when we go to print, we have to print the book in 4 pages at a time. A couple years ago, the coach recognition, if I'm not mistaken, it's still there. I could be wrong, but it's definitely on the O5 website on a yearly basis, for sure. So we can look at adding another 4 pages back to the book, but then the cost of the book goes up. So it's a numbers thing for what the cost for what we sell the books for and stuff. So.
It's just hard that they put in the volunteer work, and all of a sudden, it's not there for everyone to see.
Don't disagree with you at all. Our coaches are all volunteers, absolutely, and they do that. They put their stuff there. But if I'm not mistaken, they're on the last page of the book. Okay, if they're not there, we'll make sure it goes back in as one of those pages for it. We can, Brenda, if she spells too many sponsors, we'll have to make sure she adds 4 more pages to the book to make sure it's covered. So
sponsors.
But it was one of those numbers things that it's if it's not in the book, it's on the O5 website under the tournament for that year. But I see what you're saying. It's not in the book. If somebody's collecting the books, they've got the 18,000 years of books sitting there, but they don't have the year that page from it. Yeah. Steve, are you there to talk again?
No.
I was just gonna say, because I peruse the book, but I wouldn't say I know the book by any means. Does the coaches get taken into account for years of service and stuff, right? Yeah. Would it just be kind of split the difference type thing to say you have this many years of service, X amount as a competitor, X amount as a coach? That might save us page space, and then you still kind of get 2 birds with 1 stone.
Just to answer both of those, we still recognize the coaches in front of their peers at the coaches and managers meeting downstairs before the shifts start. They get their certificate of years coached at that point. I think we could probably, and I know Brenda's more involved in setting up the program book now, we could probably recognize, instead of each increment year by year levels of 5, 10, 15 years maybe, and cut down the number of pages needed for a coach recognition page?
That's the way it's done now for players.
For players, yes.
The only problem with adding the two together, Steve's suggestion, is there are some coaches that don't both.
True.
So then what do you do with those guys? Would be separate. They wouldn't be on.
They'd still be separate under a coach recognition page, right? But maybe perhaps instead of using up 4 or 5 pages of coach recognition, because there is, each time at the coaches meeting, they're giving, let's say that I had 7 years coaching experience last year, I coach again this year, they get an 8. So there's always a continuous, so maybe if we recognize increments of 5, 10, 15 years of coaching, we can recognize those coaches that way. Sue?
I still think they should be recognized for the years that they've coached.
For each year?
A lot of them volunteers, and the money is spent.
I'm not trying to toot my horn on this one at all, but I do. The salute to our open coaches is listed on page 50 of the coaches manual, or the open book. But it's the ones that have got from 5 years and up that were recognized this year with it. So, but we'll make sure it's there as we move forward. Make sure it's more prominent there. There's 2 different pages, and there's one who the coaches are for this year, and then there's a salute to our open coaches for who hit milestones of different numbers. So you're looking for a listing of every single coach that be listed there? Yeah. Yeah, it's right near the back of the book. Okay. Any other comments? Okay, so in closing, thank you all for your efforts and being here. And I know some of you have driven a long way, as I have from Toronto, and don't mind doing it to be here for this. For those who are heading back to the western part of the world, drive safe. I just would like to personally thank Fairmont Lanes and Steve for opening up his bowling center. Thank you very much. And to everybody, when I get home tonight, sometime this afternoon, hopefully before my baseball game, I will start the process of converting the video we have to upload it to the YouTube channel so everybody else can see it. This bowling center was not Wi-Fi compatible for us or cell phone compatible down here in the basement. So as such, we weren't able to be streaming. I know there's probably a whole bunch of Facebook comments about that now that we didn't stream this event. But this will be published as soon as I can when I get home. So in closing, thank you all. Drive home safe and see you later.